all your hard-earned money is just sitting there and evaporating. The vast majority of young French people are going to be dans la merde for their retirements. What's up, beautiful people? My name is Brian, and one of the things that I love discussing on my channel is the cultural differences between Europeans and Americans and sometimes Asians. I've talked about a lot here so far, but one thing that I haven't really covered is the financial side of it. And that's actually where I have some of my hottest takes. Generally, I integrate really well into European culture, but this is the one area where I feel like I have the most friction with as an American. So, without further ado, let's get straight into what shocked me the most. It's just terrifying to me how most people that I've met in Europe don't realize the importance of investing. With the exception of the Netherlands and most of Scandinavia, every European pension system is basically on the brink of collapse. And yet, in my experience, most Europeans still live with the mindset that they'll always be taken care of by the state no matter what. Meanwhile, a lot of young Americans like myself already operate with the assumption that we either won't receive any Social Security benefits by the time we retire, won't receive anywhere near enough for it to matter, or that we'll have to work well into our 70s to even qualify for it. That's why if you bump into a random American, especially if it's a guy, chances are that they'll at least know enough about the stock market to hold a decent conversation. And that's if they're not already actively investing themselves. On the other hand, I feel like it's really rare to come across Europeans that share the same interest in investing, unless they work in finance or consulting, at least in my own experience. Now, if you're European and you're watching this, you might be thinking to yourself, but aren't you Americans the ones who are known for being financially irresponsible with all your credit card debt and student loans and stuff like that? And yes, that's true, and it's a very big problem, but the point I'm trying to make here is that there are more and more Americans, and especially young Americans, who are taking personal finance and investing more seriously as a reaction to that trend. Like, we're trying to take control of our future because we've seen how the system hasn't done it for us at all. In fact, the percentage of Americans that are invested in the stock market is at an all-time high. Now, I'm not saying that Europeans are the ones who are financially irresponsible here, because Europeans actually have a lot more in savings than Americans do. But that's exactly what terrifies me so much. It's how much of those savings are going to waste here. For example, in France, where I'm at right now, pretty much everyone puts their savings into what's called a livret A, which is basically a savings account that earns the interest rate set by the Bank of France. So it's the same no matter which bank you use. The thing is, right now, that rate is only at 1.7%. That doesn't even beat inflation. Like, all your hard-earned money is just sitting there and evaporating. A lot of younger French people are also able to put their savings into what's called an LEP, or LEP in French, which is basically the same thing with a slightly higher interest rate of 2.4% as of this video. So that doesn't really make much of a difference either. If you take those savings and you invest them in something super basic yet effective, like an ETF that tracks the CAC 40, which represents the 40 biggest public companies in France, you'd earn 7 to 8% annually on your money based on historical returns. Compared to 1.7% or 2.4%, that's a massive difference. If you start investing at age 25 with only 200 euros a month, and you keep that up for 40 years, you'd end up with over 500,000 euros at the age of 65. That's more than enough to retire comfortably, even without the state pension, at least for today. And yet, most French people would consider something as basic as this to be too risky. According to the AMF, or l'Autorité des marchés financiers, only 12% of French adults invest in the stock market. The most popular investment in France is actually bonds, which people invest in through life insurance contracts, or in French, le fonds d'un euro dans une assurance vie. But this barely clears inflation by 1 to 2% on average. Like, I know it's risk-free, but if it's only barely beating inflation, I wouldn't call it an investment. In any case, unless some kind of miraculous pension reform happens, or if there's a major cultural shift that normalizes long-term investing in the stock market, the vast majority of young French people are going to be, as they say in French, dans la merde for their retirements. It's the same thing in Germany as well, where only 17% of the population invests in the stock market. Like, 70 to 75% of Germans don't even invest in anything at all. That's crazy. It's the same story for Italy, Spain, Portugal, Greece, Poland. Maybe not Austria, but you get the idea. I've tried to convince some of my European friends and classmates about the importance of investing early, the power of compound interest and all that, but they just take it as something that's interesting, and they brush off how serious of an issue this actually is. And that's wild because investing as a European is easier than ever. Like, you have platforms like Trade Republic that gives you access to American stocks, and they only charge you €1 per trade. And, oh yeah, this video is not sponsored, by the way. What I'm trying to say here is that the tools and the knowledge are out there, and everything is easily accessible. But the mindset is just not there. If you made it this far, let me know in the comments below if you think I'm making sense, or if I'm just being dramatic. Or if I'm just another American that can't get over something that's really just a culture shock, which might be the case. I mean, Europeans have always relied on the state for other major benefits like free healthcare and free education, while Americans are kind of conditioned to always look out for ourselves. Like, for example, starting a college fund for your kids is something that's super common in the US because of how expensive university can get. But I've never heard of anyone ever doing that here in Europe. I guess this is why many of us Americans see investing as something that even the average person needs to do, while many Europeans still associate it with risk, greed, or materialism. But having said all that, here's the paradox. Living in Europe has actually made me take money way less seriously. Like, I still care about preparing financially for the future, of course, but my relationship to money has definitely softened. I've met so many Europeans here that manage to have the most amazing lifestyles. Like, they travel a lot, they go skiing every winter, all while earning way less than the average American. And it's all possible because of many reasons, like people here don't need cars, for example. In pretty much every major European city, there's a reliable and affordable public transportation system. There's always a metro, a tram, or at least a bus within walking distance of wherever you live. You can also take a Flixbus or a train to travel, even to other countries, and it's quite cheap too. Rent is way more affordable. Like, over here in France, students get major housing subsidies like the CAF, which actually helps a lot. Groceries are way cheaper overall, and farmers markets are also a big thing here. Like I mentioned before, people barely need to pay anything to go to public universities here. Common leisure activities like hiking cost almost nothing, and socializing doesn't revolve around consumption either. Instead of spending like $50 at the restaurant, you can just go for a picnic at the park, hang out by the river, or just grab a few drinks at the bar where the alcohol is way cheaper and you don't have to tip. The past 2.5 years that I've lived in Europe, I've never been so broke, yet so happy at the same time. Like, I honestly didn't know that something like that was even possible. Money here is nowhere near as tightly tied to happiness as it is in America, and that's amazing. But sometimes I just can't help but wonder if this ease of living makes people a bit too comfortable. I might be completely wrong here, and you let me know if that's the case, but I don't really get the sense that people here really reflect on how sustainable this way of living is, given that state benefits do play somewhat of a big part in letting people live this way. I think that's all I have to say for today, and I promise I'm not looking down on how Europeans do things here. It's just genuine concern. So please let me know in the comments what you think about what I said, because this is a topic that I'm really passionate about. I'm actually really looking forward to some interesting discussions in the comment section. All right, that's all I have for you guys today. And like always, have a great rest of your day, and I'll see you next time. Bye-bye now.